So, when I was younger, I used to brag to my friends that if it came to it, I could win a fight between myself and a German Shepherd. I always believed that. Mano a mano, I think I could take out a German Shepherd if it came to it. I believed that up until I was a carpet cleaner in Salt Lake City, and we had a client that had a Rottweiler. And, every time I would go clean his house, the Rottweiler would be very, very nice and friendly when the owner of the house was there in the room with me cleaning. But as soon as that guy left, that Rottweiler, it was in my face, just growling, just mean. It was like facing off with a black bear or something. I mean, I would have rather faced off with a black bear. I mean, I was frozen with my carpet cleaning equipment, just not daring to move as that Rottweiler was in my face. And then that Rottweiler could hear his master coming back through the house towards the family room, and his tail would wag and he'd get all friendly and nice. And then the guy would leave the room again, and that Rottweiler would have me in the corner just frozen stiff as it growled in my face. It was going to tear my throat out. It was at that minute that I knew I was not going to win a fight with a dog, especially a dog that outweighed me at the time. I was just a college student back then. And that dog scared me to death. And I told the guy, I said, hey, every time you leave the house or the room, that dog, it corners me and it won't let me clean the carpets. And I think it's going to kill me and eat me. And he's like, oh, no. She's a good doggy. She won't hurt you. She won't hurt you. Anyway, I told the guy I wasn't going to clean his carpets anymore until he put the dog away. He was pretty offended by that. I don't know. I mean, he thought his dog was nice. That dog was a killer. A killer. And that carpet cleaning, man, it did give me PTSD for years afterwards. Not just because of that dog. There was another lady that had a dog. She had a big, huge Saint Bernard, and she lived in a really nice house. She had this plush, beautiful dark blue carpet, and that Saint Bernard had peed everywhere. It had pissed on that rug. It pissed on those rugs everywhere. And I told the lady, I said, hey, the dog has bleached out the carpet with these pee stains. I'll do the best I can, but I think I can only get about 50% of these out. And she's like, that's fine. Do the best you can. Well, after the job was done, I had misjudged. I had miscalculated. I only got maybe about 25% of the stains out. And that lady was livid. She just tore into me. I'm not paying you. I'm not going to write you a check for this job. You did a half-ass job. I'm not paying you. You didn't deliver what you promised. I'm not going to pay you for this job. There's still pee stains everywhere. And then she started on me. She started in on me because I was like, hey, I did the best I could. And she's just like, nah, man, you're just an uneducated carpet cleaner. Blah, blah, blah. And she started in on me personally. And that's when my smart ass mouth started running. And I said, hey, listen, lady, I'm at least smart enough to know not to let my dog piss all over my floor. That just didn't work. She got even more upset at me. Then she was yelling at me even more. Being a smartass in customer service that don't pay off. That was a lesson learned right there. But she was just like, no, how dare you come into my house and tell me, how dare you come into my home and insult me like that, coming into my home like that. And I said, home? More like a $400,000 toilet for your dog. And as she was kicking me out of her house, I was thinking to myself, I'm so fired. I am so fired from this job. And sure enough, I was driving to my next job and a cell phone rings and it's my boss. And he's like, hey man, did you tell Miss So-and-so that her house was nothing but a $400,000 toilet for her dog? And I said, yeah, I did. And as he chewed me out, I could tell by the tone of his voice that he had wished he was able to say something like that for his whole carpet cleaning career. He was mad at me and he chewed me out, but he was kind of like, man, I wish I could have been there to see that. Anyway, we're talking about Cujo. Cujo today. We're talking about dogs. Cujo. I gotta tell you, this is one of my favorite novels of all time. I loved Cujo. If you've been following my reviews, I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press, and I am reviewing every Stephen King novel in order of publication. And we're to Cujo now. And I listened to this on Audible as I followed along in the book word for word. You know that I'm also reviewing the Audible version along with the book. The Audible narration was done by a woman named Lorna Raven. Oh, and she did a great job. Probably one of my favorite narrators so far. I loved it. I loved it. So 10 out of 10 on the Audible narration. Perfect score. Perfect score on that. Let's get to Stephen King and Cujo now. I've been to a couple of presentations that Stephen King has put on. Yeah, I've been in the same room with Stephen King a couple times, haven't met the guy, sat in an audience and listened to him speak. One of the things that the story he's told in both of these speeches was when his motorcycle broke down and he went to the mechanic to get it fixed, and a big old St. Bernard come walking out of the garage, growling at Stephen King. And Stephen King was like, whoa, kind of like I was in a carpet cleaning business back in the day with the Rottweilers. I was like, whoa, he knew he couldn't. Just like I figured out I can't win a fight to the death with a dog, he figured out he couldn't win a fight to the death with a dog. And he's like, dude, man, to the mechanic, he's like, dude, your dog is scaring me. And the mechanic took a wrench and smacked that dog on the top of the head and said, down, boy. And that dog just went to being a nice little doggy. Cujo said, that guy got to fix my motorcycle, and I got to write a novel called Cujo out of that. That's how inspiration comes a lot of the times, just from weird situations like that. Cujo, another book set in Castle Rock, Maine, just like The Dead Zone. It kind of has references to The Dead Zone in it. What I wanted to talk most about this book, though, was not necessarily about the rabid dog, the mean dog, Cujo, everybody knows. It's an iconic book, iconic dog, iconic title of a book, iconic movie. Cujo, you mentioned that, everybody knows what you're talking about. It's part of our societal fabric, like Star Wars and, Game of Thrones and Cujo and all that kind of stuff. Everybody just knows what Jaws is, what Cujo is, what Alien is. We just know scary stuff is happening. I don't want to talk necessarily about the scary stuff in this book, because let me tell you, strip away the monstrous dog in this thing, and you've actually got a piece of literary fiction that can rival, Pat Conroy or John Irving or even Larry McMurtry's Terms of Endearment. You've got, take the rabid dog killing everybody out of this, and you've basically got the Prince of Tides. That's how well Stephen King writes his characters. This is a story about two families and their drama and struggles and infidelities and all of that just match in tone and writing some of the great literary novels of our time. And then you throw in a dog that's gone rabid and just kills all the characters, and you've got one of the coolest books ever written. That's just how good Stephen King is. The last few books I reviewed by Stephen King, I kind of gave a little bit of a bad review to. This one, no, this one is one of my favorites. This one is great. Those families, let's just talk about the families first. We got two families that are dealing with in this book. We got Vic and Donna and their son Tad, and they got some problems. Donna is unfaithful, Vic is struggling with his job at the cereal factory, and Tad is just a little kid that's scared of monsters coming out of his closet. And they have a whole ball of drama that they're dealing with all of these issues. Tad just wants to play with his Star Wars toys. Dad just wants to be successful. Mom is upset that she's caused infidelity and a rift in their marriage. And Stephen King writes those brilliantly. He writes it brilliantly. I felt for every character, Vic, Donna, and Tad. And then the other family is Joe, Charity, and Brett, who, they're just as dysfunctional, maybe more. Joe's abusive. He's kind of a jerk. Charity wants to take her son out of the relationship and move him somewhere else so he's not around the father. But they also own a dog named Cujo. And Brett loves Cujo. And Charity and Brett, they take off and leave Cujo. Well, Cujo, chases a rabbit down a rabbit hole, gets bit, goes rabid, all hell breaks loose. But it's a slow build. Part of this novel is told actually through Cujo's eyes, which is kind of cool, because we see through his eyes a dog that loves his family at first, and then he loves roaming the woods, and then he gets scratched. It's not bitten, scratched on the nose. The scratch is in the shape of a question mark. People see it, and they're like, well, what happened to Cujo? Well, he was scratched, got rabies, starts to go bad, and you can see the psychology of Cujo as he turns bad. It's not, anything supernatural. This is what I love about this book. This is why I like these kind of books. Cujo, Salem's Lot, The Stand. The horror is not supernatural. The horror is just things have gone wrong. I guess in Salem's Lot you've got vampires and they're supernatural, but they're just monsters. Cujo's kind of like a monster. He's like Jaws. He's like the grizzly bear that attacks campers. In The Stand, we've got a disease that kills people. And a lot of the other books that Stephen King writes, The Dead Zone and Carrie and The Shining, it's more of the people have a thing in their head that's causing them to do supernatural things and see visions and stuff like that. The books I like, that I think Stephen King does a better job with, just straight up monster books, just straight up monster horror. I think that's why I like this one a lot better than some of those others that I mentioned. It is just a great book. It's kind of like when I read fantasy novels, I enjoy the fantasy like George R.R. Martin or Lord of the Rings, where the magic is kind of toned down a little. But whereas when you get into some of the Brandon Sanderson books and some of the other books where the magic is just ramped up, and these guys write great fantasy books, I'm not knocking them at all. I'm just saying sometimes the fantasy, the Harry Potter type fantasy, can just be so outlandish that I think it's kind of like the supernatural stuff in Stephen King's book. I just like the low level people trying to figure out stuff on their own without supernatural powers. And that's kind of the way Cujo is. It's kind of the way Salem's Lot was. It's kind of the way The Running Man, but The Long Walk was. Just simple stories with people dealing with things that can really happen. People have dealt with St. Bernards that have been infected with the rabies. In fact, part of Stephen King's inspiration for Cujo was there was a St. Bernard that had rabies, and he read a newspaper article about that, combined that with his story where he went to visit the guy at the motorcycle shop and the dog came out. Stuff like that. It's like my stories about carpet cleaning. I can turn those into a book someday. I'm not going to do a Cujo book or a rabid dog book, but those carpet cleaning stories, they add up to stuff over time. And that's kind of the way, just this is a little bit of my writing advice here creeping into this review, but that's where ideas come from. Those are the kind of ideas you need to grasp hold of and put in your writing. Stephen King does a great job. Stephen King's like me. He's got so many ideas churning in his head. He'll never be able to write them all. He'll never be able to write every novel that he wants to write. I've written this novel and 3 others, and I don't have enough time in my life to finish them all, because every life experience I've had has given me an idea for a novel almost. So, off the subject there, let's get back to Cujo. As you know, I rate things 1 to 10. I'm giving this Cujo a solid 9.5. Almost perfect. I absolutely adored every word of this book. I loved the characters. I loved Cujo. I loved the monster movie feel of it. I loved the tension, and people die. You get a nice literary drama where everybody gets killed by a monster. It's fantastic, and not everybody dies by Cujo's teeth. There are some deaths in here that are twist and turny, and they're not. Cujo don't kill everybody. He don't kill everybody. Some other things kill some people. But let's just say 9.5 out of 10. Now, last thing I do with every review, every book I write, I dedicate to Stephen King, Motley Crue, and the Oakland Raiders, because those were the three most important things to me when I was a kid. And so they get a shout out in every one of my books. I dedicate every one of my books to those three. So everybody go get Cujo. It is one of my favorite Stephen King books. You will love it. A great, great monster story.